It's that time of year again, folks, somehow. 2017 has been an absolutely amazing year for gaming, with numerous games fit for a Game of the Year award coming out. This year has been really tough for me to narrow down to only 5 games. I thought last year was difficult, but 2017 showed up with an absolute body slam like, oh yeah? Making this video pretty damn hard to make. Similar to last year's video, I'll be doing a kind of top 5, but they'll be in no particular order. However, one thing I do want to do differently is pick my favourite game out of my games of the year for the very top of the top to get the recognition it deserves. Anyway, with all that said, let's jump in, shall we? Let's start things off with one of the first new games of the year with Resident Evil 7. Like many RE fans, my love for the series had slowly been eroded by the travesties acted upon it by Capcom, as the series slowly turned into a generic action shooter game with the lackluster Resident Evil 5 and the absolutely horrendous Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 7 came along like a much needed mighty boot up the arse of the series, with Capcom taking the rather unexpected risk of making it a first person game. However, despite this drastic change, RE7 felt like a return to the formula we all knew and loved, which we hadn't really seen since the original trilogy on the PS1. I like the return of the more classic inventory management of the series, as well as of course the scarcity of ammo and healing items, which actually made it feel scary to face enemies. While the main non-human enemy of the game, the Moulded, felt kind of boring and uninteresting to fight, the main cast of antagonists, the Bakers, absolutely made up for this in spades. Once again, this series was survival horror, and it was really good survival horror as well. The atmosphere was well created, with some wonderful music and an interesting and varied location. The bosses felt like a return to form as well. Even if I did find the reoccurring chase with Jack Baker very tiring, it wasn't enough to dampen my love for the game. The story is schlocky nonsense, but to be honest with you, that's exactly what I want from my Resident Evil game. I'm all for deep, meaningful stories, but sometimes it's good to just have a fun, silly story that pairs perfectly with the game and also with the series' roots. All in all, not only was Resident Evil 7 just a really good game in its own right, it also reinvented a series I was sure had died a long time ago. Let's move on to the next game, which is Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. As long-standing viewers of the channel will know, I am very much of the opinion that games should be able to tackle sensitive topics like all other mediums, and also tackle them in the unique way that only games can. Hellblade tackles a topic that is still bafflingly taboo in the modern age, the one of mental illness and what it's like to actually live with it. This very difficult topic is dealt with brilliantly, with a well thought out and brilliantly done representation of psychosis, which is done through their well realised main character as well as the audio. This game has been recognised for its absolutely wonderful audio design, which plays a huge part in how the game communicates this to you. A big part of the credit must also go to the voice acting as well, as Senua is the only real character in the game for pretty much most of it. A poor performance could have torpedoed the game, but thankfully this was done just as well as the rest of the game. However, the topic itself is weaved into the very mechanics of the game, which is exactly what a good game does. It uses the medium to express the story in a unique way. Overall, Hellblade is a brilliantly told story with a very interesting world and mythology alongside it. The combat is the main negative to the game, as it doesn't really do anything new or interesting. However, it does have a hefty weight to it, and landing blows does feel satisfying. So, when the worst part of the game is merely decent rather than excellent, you know you are dealing with a quality game. Ninja Theory did an amazing job on a low budget here with Hellblade, showing us all that you don't need multiple millions of dollars to make a AAA quality game. From the almost AAA to the true AAA, the next game on my list is Horizon Zero Dawn. For me, this game had quite a lot of hype behind it, as I had been interested in the cool concept ever since I saw the trailer back at E3. So I was happy to discover that Guerrilla Games had outdone themselves with the absolutely gorgeous, compelling game of Horizon. As I mentioned in my video on the game, the core mechanics of Horizon Zero Dawn are nothing new. We've seen them all in some other open world game somewhere. However, there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking someone else's idea and being like, okay, what can I do with this? And despite the fact that it has very familiar mechanics to anyone who's played an open world game before, the game still manages to be interesting and a ton of fun to play. It helps that the main character Aloy is a fantastic one who, while feeling like a part of the world, is also a good stand-in for the questions the player will be asking without that feeling contrived. It even makes sense that she does the standard main character talk to themselves thing within her story and her sort of progression as a character. While the mechanics of the game are nothing new, the world of Horizon absolutely does feel fresh as one of the most breathtakingly gorgeous ones in recent memory. I think only Assassin's Creed Origins can challenge Horizon in this regard. The story is also really unique and interesting, and the whole idea of robot dinosaurs makes sense, and it doesn't feel like it's there just because, well, robot dinosaurs. Overall, Horizon Zero Dawn shows that at least within Guerrilla Games there is still passion and fire to be found within the very oversaturated open world genre. Our next game is the one and only Pyra, which of course was made by the now legendary indie developers Supergiant Games. This too carried with it a very heavy weight of expectation, as both of their prior games had been a very special level of excellence. But Pyra exceeded those expectations, and it did so by being not only really good, but also nothing at all like the two games that preceded it. In fact, I would argue that there isn't a game anywhere quite like Pyra. Let's begin with the art. As is expected of Supergiant, it is absolutely stunning and awesomely unique, and it also fits perfectly with the worlds and gives a sense of magic and wonder to even the most frightening of areas, of grimy areas. It all still looks beautiful. The world itself is its own unique presence, with each of the areas maintaining a strong, coherent theme. The real strength, though, is the characters. Supergiant's previous two games were chock full of excellent narration, but in Pyra the game is heavily text-based. There is still narration, but it only happens in certain segments of the game. It is still excellent, mind, but it's just a lot less reliant upon it. Everywhere else, the sheer strength of the writing bring these cast of characters to life. I genuinely, honestly cared about every single one of them, and there were several moments where this game made me tear up. That's not something that really happens in games or really in general to me when it comes to media, so this speaks to the strength of the wonderfully realised characters and the emotions that Supergiant managed to get out of you with this game. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't end this particular segment with the combat. There is no easy genre reference for this one. The best way would be to describe it as a 3v3 sports game. Yeah, sports game. You control one of three characters, moving them around the field, trying to catch an orb and get it into the enemy's pyre, with a heavy emphasis on switch between characters who each have their own unique abilities. While it's not for everyone, I found it challenging and engaging, and it was nice to have a truly new and refreshing combat style. Pyra, I think, will stand the test of time as a truly unique game, something that I'm sure you will agree is not easy to pull off. So, we've come to our final game. After this, I'll reveal which one was my favourite. But first, Nier Automata. Earlier I spoke of how Hellblade integrated its theme into the actual gameplay mechanics. Well, Nier Automata is an absolute masterclass in how to marry story, world and character seamlessly together in a way that only video games can. The base combat is usual platinum fare of hack and slash spectacle, which, while satisfying and enjoyable, takes a backseat to the rest of the experience. That's not even a mark against the combat, it's more a compliment to the pure strength of the rest of the game. The game not only plays with a wild variety of different gameplay mechanics that actually make sense and feel coherent, it even plays brilliantly with the camera to set different tones on different segments of the game for those different gameplay mechanics. Where this game's brilliance truly shines, though, is the story and characters and how the game plays with the idea of multiple playthroughs. To get the true ending of the game, you have to play through it several times. However, each playthrough is different and gives you a different segment of story and can't really be described as a playthrough at all in the usual meaning of that particular word. It's more just, hey, here's more of the game from a different perspective. It also helps that the world itself is fascinating and really interesting to explore, with some seriously surprising what the hell moments that are memorable far beyond the initial shock factor. Platinum Games not only outdid themselves, they have also made a game that, in all honesty, should be studied by developers all over for the unique way it did story and the way it challenged the player's expectations and preconceptions. Anyone who hasn't played this game, you're missing out on not only one of the best games of this year, but one of the best games ever made, period. So, there we have it. My 5 top games from 2017. But you may ask, which one was the best of the best? Well, you've probably already guessed it, but it is none other than Nier Automata. It stands head and shoulders above the other games in my list, which, given how each of them is an awesome game that I'd happily replay multiple times, just shows you how much I love Nier Automata. Platinum have shown themselves to be true masters, and I can't wait to see what they have in store for us in the future. Before I close the video though, I just want to give a special mention to some games that almost made the list. They are none other than Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Hollow Knight and Ruiner. All brilliant games in their own right, but again, this shows the sheer amount of good games that came out this year, that these great offerings didn't quite make the cut for me this year. Well, that's me done for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your support. It really does make a huge difference to us. Thank you very much for us reaching 50,000 subscribers yesterday. That is a pretty huge milestone. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'll see you next time.